Hi, I'm Richard Bishop, and welcome to my presentation, which talks about building test labs with Mobile Centre. To give you a little bit of detail about me, my name's Richard Bishop. I've been working as a tester for around 20 years in the United Kingdom. I'm currently working at Lloyds Banking Group, where for the last 12 months I've been involved in the evaluation, procurement and rollout of Mobile Centre to around 100 testers across the United Kingdom, as well as some of our offshore partners in India. This presentation will take you through some of the challenges that we've faced and basically take you through our thought processes and give you some details about how we've implemented Mobile Centre and some of the benefits that we're getting from it. So first of all, we'll look at the problem statement. Most of our customers, or a great many of our customers, are using mobile devices to access the bank's mobile applications. We've around 15 million users on a day-to-day basis, and historically we found that our ability to automate functional tests on mobile devices was limited. As you can see from the picture on the slide, we've had testers working with application code, making changes, and then trying to validate that on a mobile device, and it can be a little awkward. Separate devices that are used for manual testing are difficult to manage, and it's also hard to share them between multiple people. When testers start to have to test on multiple device formats and different screens sizes, that can also pose its own difficulties in terms of device management. Connecting all these devices to laptops, MacBooks and so on to automate some testing creates its own challenges in terms of which devices are available to which testers, which location they're in and so on. So it makes a lot of sense to try and build and develop shared labs where devices can be accessed remotely by multiple people. This obviously gives economies of scale, as well as giving people access to the devices that they need when they need them. So when we started looking at our mobile device farm, we decided that the solution should give shared access to multiple devices for two purposes: manual and sort of exploratory testing, the sort of things where people make a change and then want to validate that immediately in real time, as well as automated testing where when code is built, for example, we can automatically deploy that code to mobile devices and then run tests. We wanted to be able to support the latest versions of iOS and Android, and we also wanted a solution that could be upgraded quickly and easily to support those new versions as they come out. We also wanted the ability to remotely reset devices. Obviously, phones need to be turned on and off from time to time. We need to reset them. We need to be able to unplug them and plug them back in. And so we were looking for a solution that would give us at least some of those capabilities. We also wanted a responsive user interface. We'd evaluated some other tools and found that there was a certain amount of latency between a user interaction and something actually happening on the screen. And that's not a pleasant user experience. And so we wanted to make sure that the UI for the mobile device farm was responsive, not just for testers based in the UK, but also those in India and other offshore locations. We also had a specific requirement in that we needed to support on-premise devices. The reason for this is that we have certain tablets which are used in our branch network. These devices are used by bank staff to help customers to access their accounts and show them how easy it is to bank online and use mobile banking apps. Those devices only work when they're connected to Lloyds Wi-Fi networks, and so we had a requirement that our devices had to be hosted at Lloyds so that they would work as expected and in the same way that they do in real life. So we went through a selection process and we looked at multiple vendors for mobile device platforms. We took criteria from various teams in retail banking, as well as our online digital platform, insurance and central IT teams, and we ranked each of the requirements that they suggested as either essential, desirable, or not applicable. Once we'd done that, we could then determine which vendors would be suitable for our mobile device platform, and we were able to discount some that weren't able to meet our criteria. As part of the selection process, we published the findings internally through our intranet, and once we'd established a shortlist of potential vendors, we did a detailed evaluation with multiple teams, all sharing their inputs and learning from one another. As a result of that evaluation, we decided on Mobile Centre strategically, although some areas of the bank that had already started to use other platforms were permitted to carry on with that where they had a specific tactical reason for staying with that type of solution. This picture here shows you a high-level diagram of what it is that we have configured within Lloyds Banking Group. So if I start on the left-hand side and work towards the right, on the left we have a Mobile Centre server. This is a Windows server hosting a web application, and it's connected to, well, obviously testers log into that through HTTP, but it also has connections to a number of Mobile Centre connector PCs. These are PCs connected to USB powered hubs. Those powered hubs have the mobile devices that we're looking to test connected to them. And so when a tester wants access to a particular device, say an iPhone X or a particular Android device, the tester browses to the Mobile Centre server, selects the device from a list, and is then connected through the connector to the mobile device, and they can see it in their browser. The mobile devices are all attached to wireless networks, and those wireless networks are either configured to connect internally to Lloyds Banking Group applications or occasionally to external sites for applications that are hosted outside of our network. The mobile devices are also accessible from Lloyds Banking Group test networks, meaning that applications such as ALM, Performance Center, UFT, and tools such as that can access the devices. And we've also started to investigate the use of things like Jenkins to automate tests on mobile devices. Once we've built our infrastructure, the next thing to do was start scaling out. We wanted to be able to encourage the adoption of Mobile Centre and make it accessible and available to testers across the whole of Lloyds Banking Group. The way we've started to do this is by giving people advice on physical installation. We have rack-mounted shelves, and we've acquired special cooling fans that help to keep these devices, which are permanently on charge, cool. We've also started to use Cambrionics USB hubs, which are used to connect these devices to the connector PCs, and they have the ability to charge multiple devices at the same time, all at up to 2 amps, which means they can quite happily support iPads and other large devices or devices with a large current drain. We also have the ability through a UI to turn on and off individual ports, which simulates us unplugging and plugging devices back in. This is particularly useful if we get a little bit of a glitch with hardware and we need to turn something off and back on again, or disconnect and reconnect it. We've also been working closely with our device procurement team. This team is responsible for buying mobile devices, not just for use of employees, but also for testing. And when they get requests now for new devices, they're encouraged to pass them over to us, because if we already have that type of device in our test lab, we've found it's a very good way of getting people to use the shared lab rather than going out and continually buying new phones for every team of testers across the bank. The other thing that we've worked on is setting up processes and the sort of procedures for getting people access to Mobile Centre. We're working on setting up single sign-on. We've set up a support mailbox as well as a Jira ticketing system so that people can raise support requests with us. And we found that that's a very good way of finding which difficulties testers are having and then sending them the appropriate support and advice documents. We've also invested in ART, which is the adoption readiness tool. So we've got the training materials for Mobile Centre, which we use to help bring people up to speed when they're first starting off using mobile devices in the farm. And we've also run multiple sessions via WebEx as well as face-to-face to share best practice guides and how-to type information for people who want to get started with Mobile Centre. I'm now going to show a brief demo. This demonstration doesn't represent one of our specific banking applications, which I wasn't able to share to an external audience, but it shows a proof of concept recorded by a colleague of mine who wanted to show how we could drive a mobile device using UFT. In this case, he's written some code which allows us to get the latitude and longitude for a specific postal code within the UK and then spoof that address so that the device thinks it's in that new location. We then do a couple of searches to show that that GPS location change has been successful. In this demonstration, as you can see, we have UFT with the test script in it. In record and run settings, we're able to choose the device where we'd like to run this test. In this case, you can see we're choosing a particular Samsung Android device. We've also got various options. We can choose to set up and run a particular application, but in this case, all we've done is said we want to connect to the device and do something within a browser. You can see that we're launching Chrome. So as you can see, the test is now running. We've connected to the device and we've already run a command to get the latitude and longitude for a particular postcode. That's saved as a variable, and we can then change the location, which we've done, and do a Google search. And as you can see, it's brought up a list of addresses in central London. The script then searches for an address near to Edinburgh, gets the latitude and longitude for that, and then does the same search, where's my nearest cash machine, in Google. And as you can see, the results now come for a different area. It's a place called Musselburgh on the outskirts of Edinburgh. The results are then visible in UFT, as they would be for any functional test. I won't go into details now, but what you can see is that we've got the options to, for example, change the orientation of the device, so we can switch a device from being in landscape or portrait mode. We can take a screenshot of the device. We can paste text in rather than having to type it. We can also simulate interruptions to a particular business process. So for example, we can simulate, for example, the phone ringing whilst you're partway through a banking transaction. We can simulate the receipt of a SMS text message at the same time to obviously see what that will do to a particular business process. We also have options to, for example, simulate a photograph being taken. This is useful for people who want to, for example, take a photograph of a cheque rather than going into the bank to pay it in. That's a service that we offer, and it's something that we can simulate using Mobile Centre. We also have the ability to simulate a fingerprint or other biometric login, such as Face ID on iPhone or fingerprints on multiple phones. In terms of our implementation, we've now built 8 separate labs across Lloyds Banking Group. These are in Scotland as well as England and Wales. We have a large shared lab in the office near to Halifax where I work. This is used to provide a proof of concept platform where people can try Mobile Centre and see if it suits their needs. We also have specific labs for different teams. So for example, the team that's responsible for testing branch tablets is in 2 locations, in Halifax and Manchester, and they use Mobile Centre extensively. They've been doing a lot of work directly with Micro Focus R&D teams to help make sure that Mobile Centre works well with our applications, and they've done a lot of work on, for example, object identification within UFT scripts to make sure that our test scripts run reliably when we need them to. We also have labs in London, and we've got numerous little pilot projects where people are expressing a desire to move their testing to Mobile Centre, so we expect that the use to grow rapidly over the next 12 months. We currently have around 76 devices available, and around a third of those are in the shared pool that is accessible to everybody. We try and make sure we have the latest iOS and Android devices. We found that our customers update and upgrade their phones on a regular basis, so it doesn't take long for a new phone to be out before our customers are using it for real, and so we like to be able to try and replicate that in our labs. One benefit that we've had of sharing devices in labs and shared device farms is that expensive devices such as the iPhone 11 range, which are around £1,000 in the UK, we don't need to buy one for every team. You've got the ability to share those sort of expensive devices. We're also looking potentially at acquiring foldable devices like the Galaxy Fold, which we know is very expensive and definitely something that we want to try and have in a shared lab rather than replicated across multiple sites. So now I'm going to run through some examples of how testers at Lloyds Banking Group have been using Mobile Centre. So one of the first teams to adopt Mobile Centre was the Halifax General Insurance team. The key requirement that they had is that they have teams of developers working in India who don't have access to UK mobile devices. When they were making changes to application code, they weren't able to see the impact that that had on the user experience, and so they'd have to raise a ticket and have somebody in the UK run the test to determine whether or not the change that they'd implemented had been successful. Obviously, that caused a delay to validating whether or not a change was a good change or not, and so to eradicate that change, we've given testers in India access to devices in the UK. That means that they can make a change to an application and very quickly see whether or not that change was successful. Another team that's been making use of this is our retail tablet team. There's a new developer team in our Manchester lab, and one of the things that they wanted to do was automate the processes to simulate the interaction between branch staff using a tablet and customers who come into our branches. We've been working very closely, as I mentioned earlier, with Micro Focus R&D team to iron out a few teething troubles in terms of object identification and some restrictions that had been built into our applications. That's now going very well, and we're looking to build on the experiences that this team has had by sharing their knowledge across Lloyds Banking Group. They've been automating the banking process by using UFT and Mobile Centre together, and we've had a lot of help, particularly with things like object identification from the Micro Focus R&D team. The next step is to work on automated application packaging rather than doing this manually. Applications have to be packaged before they can be put on the Mobile Centre platform. This means that they're effectively wrapped in some code that helps applications such as UFT or Appium to interact with and control those applications and make scripts reliable. So the next step for us is to look at automating that process, as well as finding greater efficiencies in test automation. Another strange business case that we had was we have a marketing team who are responsible for ensuring that marketing messages from the bank appear correctly in different mobile devices at different screen resolutions, for example. Each tester, in order to do this, had two separate devices. So they'd have an iOS device and an Android device, and they would manually go through a business process making sure that the appropriate messages appeared at the right time. Because our applications are secured by default to prevent users from taking a screenshot, gathering evidence that these tests had been performed was quite difficult. Testers we found were using two different phones, and so they'd navigate through a business process on, for example, the iOS device and takes photos of the screen on the iOS device using the Android to prove that the application works as expected. Obviously, this is time consuming. Testers had to email images to one another as documentation for their tests, and it wasn't desirable. So by packaging applications and using Mobile Centre to automate this process, we've saved significant amounts of time for this type of testing. And it's an example of the type of use that we never actually anticipated when we introduced this into the bank. Another example of a requirement that we didn't know we had until people started to use Mobile Centre. We have a Wi-Fi network team, and when I got in touch with this team asking them for their advice about hosting a large number of devices in one location and what potential impact that might have on the Wi-Fi network, they sounded very interested in Mobile Centre. So I gave them a quick demo, and they felt that it would be useful as a test tool for them. They often make changes to our wireless networks. They have to do this outside of core business hours because they obviously want to make sure that changes and tests that they do don't have an impact on other users. Historically, they used to come into the office at night to do this type of work. So after midnight, testers would be driving into their nearest office, making changes to the network and proving that devices could still connect. Obviously, this is antisocial in terms of their work-life balance, and we wanted to try and address that. So we built 2 labs for them, one attached to each of 2 different wireless networks. This allows them to make changes to the network remotely and then test that device connectivity is unaffected by the changes. And obviously this has made a significant improvement to their quality of life, as well as reducing the overtime bill for people working overnight and through the night on these types of tests. Another benefit that we've had is reducing the spend on mobile devices. Obviously, we have to buy devices in order to support testing, and that can be costly, particularly if mobile devices are used for a number of tests and then left locked in a desk drawer or in a cabinet somewhere. Those devices are then not available for use by other people, and it can be difficult to make sure that the right devices are available and charged and ready for use when people need them. There's a couple of messages there from Slack channels where people are saying, I can't find a particular device, or does anyone have something with a particular version of Android? It's possible within Mobile Center to search for specific versions of operating system or specific device types and know immediately whether those devices are available for use and reserve them if necessary. We found that, as I mentioned earlier, our mobility services team who procure devices for test teams at Lloyds Banking Group were often being asked for expensive devices. And by encouraging more people onto the Mobile Center platform, we've been able to reduce the spend on extra mobile devices for testing. So we now have Mobile Center in place, and whilst it works, there are extra things that I would like to do with it to make it more usable and deliver more value to the bank. So one of the first things that I'm going to be doing in 2020 is incorporating single sign-on into it. That will make it more secure and easier for us to manage. We're not having to set up user accounts and passwords and so on. We can simply allow people to have access to the application using their normal bank login. The other thing that we want to do is get Mac Minis connected to our network. The reason for this is so that device signing and application packaging can be automated, which will make it easier to get new devices into the test lab and deploy applications more quickly when testers want to do their testing. So there won't be a delay whilst agents that are used to connect to the mobile device are signed manually on a Mac and then copied over onto the Mobile Center connectors. But also applications can be packaged automatically, saved in Mobile Center, and then deployed to devices at the point when we want to test. At Lloyds Banking Group, we have multiple networks, and one of the things that I would like to do is make some changes so that Mobile Center can be used across more locations and in more of those test networks. This should broaden the user base, allow more people to get the benefits of Mobile Center, and obviously give us economies of scale. I've already started work on a shared documentation library which describes the process for integrating Mobile Center with other tools. We're working in particular with UFT, as well as Appium, Selenium, and tools like ALM and Jenkins to automate those tests. As I've already mentioned, we're planning to bring more labs online to benefit from economies of scale. So thank you. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. If you have any more questions, I'm online now to hear them, and I'd be happy to talk to you either now or offline later if you want to get in touch with me via Twitter or through LinkedIn. Thank you.